Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a review and it is late at night. I'm finally getting a couple minutes to myself. I had meant to do this review days ago. In fact, I've worn this fragrance as my scent of the day for 3 days in a row, which I hardly do. I've worn it 3 or 4 times before this, so I have massive experience with this fragrance. This is called Oriental Velours from the house of Les Indemodables. And if you know my Les Indemodables collection, they are all in 10 ml decants, because what I did is I figured, you know what, you don't always need full bottles of everything, especially expensive niche houses. Now, to be fair to Les Indemodables, they are expensive per mil. I think their fragrances sell for somewhere around $250 for 50 mils, 220 to 250, give or take, depending on the fragrance. And their pricing is not outrageous, but it is pretty expensive. So when you have a big collection, you don't always need full bottles necessarily, right? So what I did is I got with a friend and I got these 10 ml decants. And so far on the channel, I have reviewed Vanille Havane. I gave a full review of Vanille Havane. I reviewed Ambre Supreme. And if you like that ambergris-like smell, real ambergris, Ambre Supreme is a must sniff for you. It's beautiful. Really feels like, you know, sparkling sunshine off of just a beautiful, you know, pond of water, lake of water, ocean of water. Just imagine as far as the eye can see, just water and sparkles and just brilliance. That ambergris in there is stunning. And to be fair, I was actually pretty rough on Vanille Havane when I reviewed it. But the more I've worn it, the more of the darker aspects, you know, the less sweet aspects of this fragrance have shown itself to me. So I think Les Indemodables is kind of one of the best niche houses in the game right now. I absolutely love what they're doing. I love their collection, and I still have 3 more to discuss on the channel. So this was what I was saying about not always needing full bottles. Sometimes 5 or 10 ml decants do absolutely fine. I mean, I've worn this probably 6 or 7 times, Oriental Velours, and look at that. I'm maybe 5 mils in. So, you know, would it be nice to be able to show a full bottle to you guys? Yes. Is it necessary, though, from the pragmatic side of my perfume wearing? No, I don't think it is. So still to come from this house is Iris Perle, Rose de Jamal, which is one of the most beautiful rose fragrances I've ever smelled, and Musc de Sables, which if you like something like Musc Ravageur, I would highly urge you to check out Musc de Sables. Okay, so those are the reviews to come, but today it's all about Oriental Velours, and you can see this has the biggest dent of any of my decants, and that is because this is my absolute favorite of all from the entire brand that I've tried. Now, to be fair, there is a lot that I have not smelled. I have not smelled any of the colognes, Escale in Haiti or Escale in Indonesia. I have not smelled Patchouli Noisette. I have not smelled Chypre Azurel. I have not smelled Fougere Emerald, Cuir de Chine. I have not smelled, as you can see, a lot of their fragrances. I haven't smelled the new Vanille Havane Extrait. They call it Absolute or whatever it is. The Extrait version of their bestseller Vanille Havane. So I still have not smelled a lot from the brand, but from what I have smelled, Oriental Velours is my absolute favorite. And it's interesting because Oriental Velours was actually crafted by somebody other than Antoine Lie. Antoine Lie has been crafting most of their newer fragrances, as he crafts many of the fragrances for the houses who use their oil house. So the founder of Les Indemodables, her name is Valerie. Pulverale. Sorry about that, Valerie. All apologies. I'm sure my French tongue is leaving Frenchmen trying to gouge their ears out and punch their head. But I know that her and her husband Remy run Les Indemodables and the oil house side of it, which is L'Atelier Francois Maitrier something. It's a very high-end oil house. Their oil houses are the ones that provide Eris, her oils. There are the ones who provide Les Abstraits, his oils, for Eugene's house, which I've reviewed all 3 of those on the channel. And they're the ones who provide Les Indemodables, the oil as well. And so it's a very high-end, you know, those are some of the best niche quality-wise, especially price for money, quality-wise, everything that you're getting, you get a lot. Even though they're expensive, you get a lot for your money with these brands. And Antoine Lie has been the perfumer for many of those houses. But early on in Les Indemodables' journey, there were other perfumers who came in. One perfumer was a woman named Florence Foulet. And Florence Foulet did basically all 5 of the very early Les Indemodables fragrances. She did Fougère Emerald, Chypre Azurel, Cuir de Chine, which I've never smelled any of those 3 that she did. And then she did Oriental Velours, which is my absolute favorite. And she did Escale and Haiti from the Cologne collection in 2020. So she came back and did one more fragrance later on. So I need to smell her work, her earlier work for the others as well. But Oriental Velours was just an instant love. And the reason it was an instant love for me is that the myrrh note absolutely shines in the beginning. If you like the way that Francois Demachy kind of used that myrrh note in some of his hits for Dior, like for example in Fahrenheit Absolute, or if you like a better example, I think, is even Eau Sauvage Parfum from 2012, okay? The Somalian myrrh note, which highlights the best aspects of myrrh for me. It is absolutely stunning. I think one of the best and most realistic myrrh notes that I've ever smelled. It's almost everything I could ask for in a myrrh note. And myrrh has been kind of the note du jour of the winter of 23 going into 2024 for me. I know my brother across the pond, Rich Mitch, has been absolutely in love with myrrh lately, and he raves about things like myrrh ardent, which I've never smelled, bois de Turkey, stuff like that. I've never smelled any of those, but I know that I also really do love myrrh, and I've reviewed some myrrh fragrances that I'm kind of lukewarm on. Like, for example, I reviewed the myrrh fragrance from Le Labo, the new city exclusive for Shanghai, Le Labo, myrrh something. I forget the number, but myrrh 55 or whatever it is. It's on my channel. You can check it out. Wasn't really a big fan of the way that they implemented the myrrh there. The florals were much heavier. Here, Oriental Velours is really my kind of myrrh fragrance, if you will. It's bitter, very bitter. Actually, when you first spray, I think it's so bitter that it almost might put some people off, because that bitter myrrh earthiness, you know, almost like you're literally digging the myrrh out of the earth. You know, this very earthy, bitter-like myrrh smell hits you early on. And I happen to absolutely love it. It's extremely resinous, okay? And maybe one of the most fungal myrrh notes that I've smelled. Just imagine this very fungal, funky fungal-like smell from the myrrh. But I absolutely love it. I mean, it harkens back to the myrrh I would imagine in Jesus's time, myrrh and frankincense and that kind of thing, you know? There is no technical frankincense in here, but there are some things that give off an olibanum-like feel, and we'll talk about that later on in the review. So, especially in the opening, you're going to get this very fungal, earthy, bitter myrrh. Sometimes myrrh has a little bit of a licorice smell to me. This doesn't come off too licorice feeling, but there is a hint. It's almost like it's you know, if you really focus and try hard, you can kind of smell it, but it's not one of those hardcore licorice myrrh-like smells like you get in Lolita Lampica Au Masculin, which I will review one of these days for the channel. There's also a little bit of a slight cola vibe, but again, just very slightly. It's not a true out-and-out cola-like smell like on some cola fragrances I've discussed on the channel recently. You know, it doesn't give you the cola vibe of Roja's Creation E in the opening or anything like that. But there is, if you really, just like I was mentioning, kind of things being in the background, you have to kind of focus on it, but you could almost get a slight feel. You know, it's not super fizzy, but you can get a slight feel of a little bit of a cola vibe. Myrrh just sometimes does that to me, especially very high quality myrrh. And this is high quality Somalian myrrh. That's one of the things that you pay when you buy a fragrance that has oils from the Atelier Francois. I need to learn the damn name. Or Les Indemodables, or any of those houses that I mentioned, Eris, Les Abstraits. You're getting a fragrance built with amazing materials. That's one of the big selling points for me. And if you're a frag head, you can smell it. I mean, instantly you'll be able to smell it. There are some fragrances you smell and you're like, shit, you know, amberwood to the max, right? These are not them at all. And that's one of the reasons I think that they're one of the best niche houses in the game doing their thing right now. So slight cola vibe, but not overtly cola, if that makes sense. It's just the myrrh shining. And that myrrh, to me, I think it is the star of the show. It's part of what makes it Oriental. There's also vanilla, bourbon vanilla, and some other things in here I think that add, there's this sort of spiciness that comes through. Even though there's no spices listed, I would not be surprised if there was like a spice blend that's sort of put in here as well. Maybe a little bit of nutmeg, or, you know, something like that, warming, this kind of warming thing. Maybe a mixture of a little cardamom or something like that. Not listed again, but I would not be surprised if there is. And so what's interesting to me is really the balance. You know, this fragrance is perfectly balanced. And this perfumer also, I know a little bit about her, Florence Foulet. I know that I heard from someone who's in the industry, I won't say who, but someone in the industry told me that she teaches perfume classes, okay? So she's like a perfume teacher. So I guess you have to be a pretty damn good perfumer to be a perfume teacher at one of those courses, right? And I'm not sure where, or I didn't go that deep, but if that's true, I mean, obviously people kind of look up to her as somebody who knows her stuff. And you can really tell this is built by somebody who understands how to balance accords. This is beautifully balanced to me. And like I said, of all the Les Indemodables, this is my personal favorite, and it was my personal favorite from the get-go. I absolutely loved that Oriental style, which if you imagine just the name Oriental, you know, Oriental fragrances are supposed to be big and bold, and they're supposed to remind us of this Far East mysticism, right? You know, that's what things like Shalimar and all those from 100 years ago were kind of based off of, right? Everyone was fascinated with the Far East back then. And Oriental fragrances are supposed to give us little bits and pieces of that. Lots of vanilla and all that. And Oriental Velours does have that. It has that warming Oriental feel that you would imagine, but true to its name. And if you learn nothing else from me from watching my videos, one thing that, you know, I will go back to over and over again is paying close attention to the name. Because for me, you know, many people overlook names, I think, to their peril. You know, brands name things, certain things for a reason. And so it's interesting because it sounds like a statement that you almost like don't have to say out loud. It's so basic to me that many people, I think, kind of skip past certain things in the name, or what they'll do is they'll read the first word. Like in this case, this is how I imagine it going. They read Oriental and they say, okay, it's an Oriental fragrance, boom, and they just move on with it, right? Their brain just kind of skips velours, okay? And I think it's a common thing for us to do because we try and take a lot of information and put it into bite-sized pieces. Our brain just naturally does that. It tries to kind of just make a decision on something in the blink of an eye and then move on, right? It's a common sort of human feature. And I try and stop myself when I notice myself doing that. And I noticed myself doing that with this fragrance. I saw Oriental Velours. I was like, what the hell is a velour? I had no idea. But I just skipped over it. And so one thing that I like to do is kind of go back and, you know, focus on the word where I don't know. Instead of just skipping over it and letting it be and just letting sleeping dogs lie, I like to come back to it and actually look something like that up. And it's funny, a lot of you might be like, you're an idiot, you don't know what a velour is, but I bet you a lot of people watching this are like, I have no clue what the hell a velour is either. And so apparently, a velour is kind of this incredibly soft, like plush fabric that they made to get kind of close to velvet, but you could also think about something like a bathrobe, right? So think of like a soft bathrobe that could be considered a velour fabric, something like that, right? And so it's basically this incredibly soft textile, right? And so close to velvet without actually being velvet is the definition. But what I love is when you take that definition of soft plus textile, texture, you can kind of apply it directly to the perfume itself. Because yes, it's an Oriental, but the detail of the ingredients at the micro level is amazing. Like focusing on how that bathrobe was made, you know, the makeup of it, exactly how it became the bathrobe. And it's funny because if you listen to other perfume lovers, very few reviews are on YouTube. I don't know if there is a true full review of this. I think if you search for it, you'll probably find Persilet's short video popping up first for you. And then a couple other, like maybe early impressions, someone, you know, testing it for the very first time, that kind of thing. But very few full videos have been, you know, have been dedicated to Oriental Velours, which kind of shocks me because, you know, for me, like I said, instantly this was a pure love. And I think maybe because Les Indemodables didn't have the hype. You know, YouTube and people who do this, they're all about the hype. And that's one of the things that I try to state. I want to always have this on my channel where I can talk about whatever the hell I want to talk about, hype or no hype. That's just kind of something that's very important to me in running my channel. And so if you look this up, you'll notice that Persilet's has a short on this, but that's it. And in that short, he says that this fragrance to him sort of wears in layers, right? And I don't know if I necessarily experience it in layers like that, where you know, at this far away from you, it smells like this, and this far, it smells like that. But I will say that in the air, it smells a little bit different, okay? When you smell it up close, I think you get more of the resins. You get a lot more of the myrrh and the heavier vetiver in the base and stuff like that. When you smell it far away, you get more of the green. You get these greener notes that when you just smell it off of yourself. Like if you move, you know, you move your head, you turn your head while you're wearing it. Sometimes you know how when you're wearing a fragrance during the day, you catch whiffs of it, right? This is one of those fragrances that when you catch it in the air off of you, it's going to smell greener than how it smells when you're actually doing this and smelling it directly off of your skin, right? I did a fresh spray before we started this video. And so much of that green touch is actually a note that I think is totally 1000% underused in perfumery, and that is the note of spruce. Spruce is an absolute love of mine. It's one of my secret weapon notes. It's kind of like tarragon for me. When I see tarragon, I'm like, okay, this is a go. When I see spruce, a lot of times I'm like, yes, this is absolutely a go. It's a note that I think was very popular in the 70s and 80s, and then it just kind of died off, if you will. Like people, they just stopped using it. You know, you see pine and a couple other ingredients occasionally, but you rarely see that spruce note done. And here it's done absolutely to perfection. And I think what you end up getting is you get bits of that green spruce, along with bits of this green smelling jasmine, which we'll kind of come back to. And the myrrh, of course, shines, like I said, when you smell it closer. Obviously, that's where you can really pick up the true beauty of the myrrh note here. And it's tough trying to really pin that myrrh note down to me, because the detail and the quality of the materials is absolutely outstanding. And there's a few notes in here that just slap you with their quality, which we'll talk about. And one of those notes obviously is that spruce note. So let's talk about some fragrances from my collection that use that spruce note from the 70s and 80s, and even into the early 90s. I don't have very many, to be honest with you. There's not many in my collection, but just a couple that are. None of these have been reviewed on my channel, but these are, just like I gave you some upcoming reviews on some of these Les Indemodables, I'm going to show you a couple that are on the Hall of Fame, Vintage Hall of Fame list. And this is one such fragrance that is absolutely front and center. This is, if you know this logo, you probably know without me even going any further. But look at this box, first of all. This will give it away, probably. But this is a fragrance from the house of Ted Lapidus. This is from, look at this. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I love stuff like this. This was like a set that they sold back in the day, and it came with this pen, which I should use this pen, because this is a badass pen. And so there's the fragrance, Ted Lapidus Pour Homme from 1978. Ted Lapidus Pour Homme has a brilliant note of spruce in it, and it has this hardcore sort of castoreum, leather, and frankincense in the base, and oak moss, which I love. It's smoky, it's woody, it's leathery, it's spicy, it's all those things, and it's got this hardcore clove. There's an aldehydic top in the opening. It's just, I love it. I absolutely love this fragrance. You know, it is on the Vintage Hall of Fame review, as is its younger brother, Lapidus Pour Homme, which is probably the most popular of the bunch. This one doesn't get as much talk. I think it only ran for 4 or 5 years and then they discontinued it, but there's a beautiful spruce note in here. That is one fragrance that has it in my collection, and a couple others that I pulled out just to show you guys, because I think spruce is so underutilized and underused, and shockingly good. You know, that if you like pine, if you like cypress, if you like those kind of notes, I would highly urge you to check out, you know, fragrances with spruce in them. I've had huge success following a note like that. Like, you know, people like to maybe follow a brand, or some people now are starting to follow perfumers more and more. I've also had a lot of success following notes. That's one of the reasons I've done my This Is Not a Top 10 and kind of focused on a note, because if you find you like a note, kind of pulling on that thread and following that thread where it takes you is a great way to discover fragrances. So this is called Aigner Silver from 1984. I recently reviewed a fragrance, within the last couple months, called Portos by Balenciaga. Probably 2 or 3 months ago I reviewed it. Hall of Fame review, Vintage Hall of Fame review, hands down, one of my favorites. And going through my videos, you'll probably be able to just pick out my favorite vintages of all time, because I'm going to do Vintage Hall of Fame reviews on all of them. This is definitely getting one. It's sort of like, I would say maybe a little bit more wearable version of Portitos. It came out a couple years later. Portitos has one of the best castoreum notes in all of perfumery, and this is one such fragrance. It is very similar to Portitos, but it has this spruce note, which does set it apart because there's no spruce in Portitos. I think it's a little bit more wearable. I don't think it's as, Portitos is like, like literally rubbing your hands in between your thighs, underneath your arms, like this hardcore manly. Silver is, I think, just a little bit more wearable. You jump to 1985, you get Adidas cologne for men from 1985. People laugh when they see Adidas, but this is no laughing matter. This was like a drugstore fragrance that had one of the most brilliant lavender notes I've ever smelled in my life, along with spruce and juniper and rose and jasmine, geranium, and there's an ambergris note in here. And this does not feel like salty ambroxan. This feels like ambergris. I mean, it feels, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some real ambergris in here, even if it's just a little bit. Which you would never get in even high-end fragrances a lot of times nowadays. Forget an Adidas fragrance, right? So that is definitely getting a review on the channel. And then in 86, there's a fragrance from the house of Pierre Cardin called Blue Marine. Blue Marine is just an amazing, don't let the name fool you. This is not a blue or aquatic fragrance. If it even leans aquatic slightly, it's because I think there's a lot of dihydromercenol in here, but there's basil and clove and patchouli and spruce and ambergris and labdanum and leather and benzoin, all these amazing ingredients. And it's perfumed by Martin Gras and Raymond Chaillan, two all-star perfumers. And finally, one of the most underrated spruce fragrances is from the house of Atkinsons, which is a kind of a shit house to me, actually. I don't think they make very good stuff, but this is my favorite Atkinson. It's called Duke. I got this from the Perfume a while back, and Duke is such a great find for me because it has a little bit of this kind of boss spirit, a little bit of Guerlain's heritage and boss spirit kind of meet up, but with this mossy, earthy tobacco and spruce mixed in together with oak moss and cedar. It's woody. It's got a little bit of that lavender barbershop rosemary herbal thing in the top, but it's so good. So good. And so kind of hidden spruce fragrance number 5 we're going to talk about today. So that's some old-timey spruce fragrances that are on the list to be reviewed on the channel. So those of you who watch these videos get a little bit of a sneak peek of what's coming up here. So, but I just mentioned that because that spruce note is so good that when I wear Oriental Velours, it just sort of, it takes me back to, honestly, it takes me back to a specific, very specific winter when I was just almost old enough to drive, probably still too young to be driving, but I remember my father let me drive on these sort of snowed in roads because no one was out. He wanted me to know what it felt like to drive on snow. And in upstate New York, my grandmother had these big coniferous trees. I have no clue what they are, but this fragrance, I don't know what type of tree specifically it was. I don't know if it was a spruce. I have no idea, but for whatever reason, this fragrance always takes me back to that winter with the snow like on the sort of needles. They don't really have like leaves. They have those needles, right? So it's like the snow resting on the branches, and it's a beautiful memory. I mean, the fragrance is, it really is one of those fragrances that I think if you fall in love with it, it'll be one of your all-time favorite myrrh fragrances, in my personal opinion. Spruce can sometimes remind folks of other coniferous-like smells, is why I think it's hard to pin down. Sometimes people get reminded of pine or fir or, like I said earlier, cypress. So, it's there's something special about spruce to me, though. I don't know what it is, and I if anyone knows the hardcore differences between spruce and pine or something like that, I'd love to know what maybe a professional would call the differences, because for me they're very close, but there's just something, spruce has something a little extra sometimes. And I don't know if it's just because it's not used as often, but something slightly medicinal, slightly cooling like you get from cypress, but just that there's something powerful about it, like you get from pine. You know, it has the cooling aspect of cypress, but the powerful aspect of pine. And I love it. I mean, like I said, when you get wafts of it off of your body, it's much more green than when you smell it up close. Um, and, you know, the green touches, when you're smelling those green touches, I mentioned that I think it's a mixture of the spruce and the jasmine. And the reason I say the jasmine is this is a very specific type of jasmine that's used in Les Indemodables. So, like I said, when you're buying a brand like this, you're buying it not just for the beautiful blending, but you're also buying it because of the ingredients. And the ingredients in here are outstanding. And I've smelled Jasmine grandiflorum in its auto form, and I've smelled Jasmine Sambac. Those are the two most popular jasmines used here. This is almost, I would say, the third, maybe like the third or the fourth type of jasmine. There's something like 80 different types of jasmines. A lot of people don't realize that. Just in India alone. I think this is a type of Indian jasmine that grows in the north of India, if I'm not mistaken. It's called Jasmine auriculatum. Jasmine auriculatum. And this jasmine, to me, sort of feels much greener. Okay, so the jasmine here doesn't feel as honeyed as the Jasmine grandiflorum feels. It doesn't feel like you're smelling rolling fields of just plush, you know, indolic flowers. It doesn't feel as sheer or as piercing or as fresh as Jasmine Sambac does. But it almost smells like you're smelling the white flower, but you're also smelling the vine that it grows on, right? It smells like you're smelling that green vine and the jasmine flower itself, and it just has this fresh grassy element to it. This specific type of jasmine is also known to have a top note of something that smells like olibanum, okay? That's where I was saying earlier that this something like myrrh, frankincense and myrrh plays in this fragrance. Something that really takes you back to the classics, the true classics, Jesus time. Maybe not as far back as what Creed claims, but we're going back here, okay? So, but Somalian myrrh and this olibanum-like smell, there is definitely something smoky. I cannot put my finger on it, though. Just like I cannot put my finger on exactly what that spruce note feels different compared to like a pine or a fir, but there's something special about the notes in these in Oriental Velours to me. It just speaks to me. And like I said, I've worn this 3 days in a row, which I hardly ever do, but really that was because I wanted to do this review days ago and I couldn't. You know, my daughter, she wants to be with me every single second we're together. So really the only time I get a chance to do these videos is once I put her down and she falls asleep. And then we cross our fingers and hope she doesn't wake up screaming while I'm up here doing the video, which we've gotten this far. But yes, there's something special about this fragrance to me. It really is. I think the ingredients, the blending, and also I love the fact this isn't hyped. I love the fact there's almost no no proper reviews on this. For me, this is the kind of stuff I'm most excited to bring to the channel because very few people are willing to do this type of work. This is almost thankless work to me. This is the work that, you know, a couple hundred people will appreciate. No one else clicks the damn link, which is fine with me. I don't care. I'm perfectly fine with that. You know, like I've said before, if even 1 or 2 people take something serious about this video and sample this fragrance and love it because of this video, I'm perfectly 100% fine with that. Those are the type of people that I want to reach anyways. So yes, I mean, this house in general, if you're a niche lover, I think the reason that this gets overlooked is because it's one of the earlier fragrances, and I don't think this fragrance brand was hyped in 2016. I think it was still kind of under the radar, if that makes sense. But now that we know, I think it's worth sampling Oriental Velours. And if I was going to get a full bottle, one full bottle of any of the Les Indemodables so far, this would be it. Without a doubt, this would be my full bottle. And you can tell by the wear usage, you know. 5 mils in, probably 5 mils left. I would love a full bottle of this one of these days, but I still want to sample some of the other ones I have not smelled yet from the brand. So it's a fragrance made for fragrance lovers is really the best way I can put it. You know, if you have experience with Oriental Velours, I would love for you all to let me know what you think. Oh, the other thing I should mention, the vanilla in here does not come off too sweet, and the vetiver, I think there's some sort of wood in here also. There's something that comes off slightly woody, I should mention. I don't know if it's the vetiver that comes off as woody. Sometimes vetiver can come off woody. I don't know if there's an extra woody note that's just not listed here, you know, like a cedar or something along those lines. It feels like it's a cedar, but, you know, I don't know if there's like another note that's not listed, or if it's just the combination of myrrh and vetiver that comes off of as woody, which I know sometimes that can do. But there definitely is something that comes off slightly woody in here that's not listed, and the vanilla is not too sweet. And you all know I do not like sweet fragrances normally. This is nowhere near too sweet for me. So anyways, now, if you have any experience with Oriental Velours, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave it in the comments. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about the brand, Les Indemodables, if you all love it as much as I do. If you think it's one of those really up-and-coming niche houses. I mean, when you're spending $250 for 50 mil, that's a lot of money. You know, that is no joke. You're spending a lot of dough per mil, especially. So, you know, if you really want to make sure you're getting something that's quality, and I do think this brand speaks to that. You know, it's a no nonsense brand. You're not paying for the flash, you're not paying for the Swarovski crystal bottles or anything like that, or caps. You know, you're paying for the juice, in my opinion. I think you're getting your money's worth. So I'd love to try the colognes and some of the others from the line. But anyways, let me know what you think in the comments. Appreciate everyone watching. As always, cheers, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.